Okay, y'all, I'm so dang excited about today's video. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I've been like the biggest book nerd for a few months now, and so I could not do a book review of what I've read from January through now, February. So this is my January and February book review. So these are all the books I've read so far from January and February. I try to read about like 5 or 6 a month. I'm obsessed with reading and I read like any chance I get. The other night I read until 4 a.m. Okay, so how I'm gonna go about doing this review is I'm going to rate the books and give you all like a quick synopsis. I'm not gonna do like any spoilers, so don't be scared that you're gonna get spoilers, but just like a little review. And then in the description, I'm gonna put kind of how I rate things, but I'll go ahead and tell y'all. My rating scale is like 1 through 5. I don't like give a 0. I mean, a 0 is like I didn't even try to read it. So a 5-star rating means that it was like the holy grail of books. I will read it a million times over. I'll recommend it to everybody. It was amazing. 4 stars is amazing. I will definitely reread it at least one more time. I don't think about it as much as I think about 5-star books, but still amazing read. 3 is I really did like the book, but I probably won't read it again. It was good and I would recommend it, but just not something that's always in the back of my mind that I want to read again. And then 2s were not great, probably wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but I read it. And then 1s are like did not finish, will not read, absolutely not, do not read it. Okay, so the first book I read was called The Year I Hated You, and it's actually a novella written by my friend from high school, Courtney, and I'll link it below for y'all. It's on Amazon Kindle. It was really good. If you've ever heard of The Hating Game, it reminds me of that. It's enemies to lovers type of vibes, and it takes place over New Year's Day, so it's a holiday read, and I literally read it over New Year's, and it was just really fun. It was really special to read it because it was her book, and I just think that was awesome. Okay, I rated her book a 4 out of 5. Definitely want to read it again, and I know she has some other things up her sleeve that I'm super excited for, and I think everyone should read it. It's a little on the spicy side. It's super good. And the next book I read was Confess by Colleen Hoover. You'll start to see a theme here. I'm obsessed with Colleen Hoover. Confess is about a girl who stumbles upon an art studio and meets the artist there, and she starts to fall for him. But because of personal things on both sides, that relationship just can't happen. And so it's kind of like a push-pull of lovers, and there's also like a whole thing. I give that a 4 out of 5. I give that book a 3 out of 5. I give that book a 3.5 out of 5. It's not my favorite Colleen Hoover book. It's one towards the like lesser end of things, but it was still really good. It actually has a TV series on Amazon Prime. I think they just missed the mark with the girl character. It didn't really add up for me for who I imagined her to be and her personality in the book, in my opinion. But it's still fun to watch because I love like when books are TV shows or movies. I think that's so fun. I definitely think if you're a Colleen Hoover fan, you should read it. But if you're just getting into Colleen Hoover, I don't think it's her best book, and so like for that reason I give it a little bit lower on the scale. The next book I read by her was Without Merit. I liked this book so much. I at first didn't. It was kind of hard for me to get into, which never happens with me and Colleen Hoover, and so I was like a little nervous. I was like, what's going on? But once I got into it, I did end up really liking it. It's way different than her other books in my opinion, and I think that's why it was hard for me at first, but then I did end up liking it because she's just amazing. Special guest. What you doing? But anyways, it is about a girl who has a pretty dysfunctional family, and they kind of take you through that. They all have their secrets, including Merit, and throughout the book you just watch them kind of bubble up and her bubble up and see what happens to her. Most of Colleen Hoover's books are about love, and this has a little bit of that in it, but I think it has like a lot of other elements to it that are different than her other books. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I definitely recommend it. I'll probably read it again, especially because at first I wasn't into it, but now that I know what happens, I love it, and so I'll definitely read it again. The next book I read was Heartbones, and I liked this book so much. Again, it wasn't one of my favorite Colleen Hoover reads ever, but it was super good. About a girl who has a really hard home life with her mom and ends up moving back with her dad for the summer until she goes off to college, and she meets a guy. They have a little summer romance and start to get crazy for their relationship as summer comes to a close. So I don't want to give anything away, so I'm kind of giving like the briefest of descriptions ever for these books. But I gave this book a 4 out of 5. I loved it. It was so fun. Definitely lighter than the other Colleen Hoover books, but still really good. The next book I read was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. 5 out of 5. This is one of the best books I've ever read. I am obsessed with the Reminders of Him. This book was so good. It's about a mom who was in prison and gets out, and she's searching for her daughter, and along the way she runs into a lot of bumps. It's so just like real, and like I cried so many times during this book. You connect so much with Kenna, and as a mom I think too, it just like really gets your heartstrings, but it's so good. 5 out of 5. Please read this. If you read any Colleen Hoover book, it needs to be this one. The next book I read was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Okay, everybody raves about this book, and I did like it. I'm not gonna sit here and say I didn't like it, but I think my other problem is that I'm such a Colleen Hoover fan right now that it's hard for me to read anything else. And so it took me a while to get into it, and then it was just kind of slow for me. The book is about a family who once started out poor and comes into money, and goes back and forth between the children's point of view now and then the adults' point of view from before, except it's all in third person. And again, third person is like hard for me to read. I can't get into it. I think that first person I like become the character, and third person I'm just like a bystander, and so I don't connect with it as much as I want to. So I think that was hard for me to read this book as well. It goes on, it takes place inside of a party, and in the party she tells like little bits of other people's stories, and I didn't really care. I don't know, maybe that was just me, but I just wanted to know about the Reba family and not about all these other people that were at the party. I don't know. I had a hard time with this book. I did think it was good and a good writing, but I had a hard time connecting with it, getting into it. 3 out of 5. I know a lot of people love it, so I think if you want to read it, you definitely should, but it's not one of the first ones I would ever gravitate to. The next book I read was Love in Other Words. Okay, so this is the first author since I started reading Colleen Hoover that I have fallen in love with. I haven't read anything else of hers yet. It's on my TBR, but so good, so good, so good. Couldn't put it down. Read it in a day. It's a dual perspective, so it goes from her childhood perspective to now perspective, which is in their late 20s, like a love battle between Macy and Elliot, and you watch them grow up together, and then you watch how their relationship had dismantled, and now they're trying to figure out what's next. I don't want to give anything away, but it's so good. It's so good. 5 out of 5. Definitely read. This book I read I don't have a copy of. It was The Two Lives of Lydia Bird, and I messed up with this one big time. My friend recommended this book to me, and it's a little out of my normal read in my opinion. It's British, so that was weird, and so she says like a lot of weird words, and I don't love when writers use like big words for no reason. If you've ever heard of beach read, they do that. She does that in that book, and it drives me nuts. So I was a little skeptical with it being a British book. So I started reading it, and I was a little confused, and I just thought the author was being like mysterious, like wanting us to not know what was happening quite yet. And so I was just rolling with the punches. And then I got to a part where I was like genuinely confused. I was like, something is wrong. I am missing a whole part of this plot. So I go and look at the table of contents. Mind you, I'm reading this on my Nook app, and I had started the book in the middle. I don't know how. And it really threw me off because I got into it pretty quickly. I was like confused, and it kept me like super intrigued, and I was like, what's going on? But then I had to go back and reread it from the beginning because I missed so much of this book. Okay. Also, it's a very depressing book. It's a book about a girl whose fiance dies in a car accident, and she is navigating grief, and it's literally just a book about her navigating grief, and she finds herself dreaming of a life with him still alive while living her life without him, and it's just like a push-pull for navigating grief. And it's a very sad book, and once I went back and read it, it was hard to get into, but it ends up good. And so I don't know, it's so weird for me because of how I read it, I think, but I don't think I necessarily recommend it either. It was just kind of weird all around, in my opinion. I give it like a 2.5. If you want to read it, you should, but it would not be the first book I recommend, or the 10th, so there's that. Next book I reread Ugly Love. I told you I'm a Colleen Hoover Ride or Die fan, and I wanted to go back and reread some of these this year slowly because I like went through all of them in November, December last year. So I reread Ugly Love, 5 out of 5 book. It's about a girl and a guy who get into a friends with benefits relationship with no strings attached, but of course there's strings. See that push-pull of that relationship. It's a dual perspective. So it goes from Tate's perspective in the today back to Miles' perspective 6 years ago. And so you see how he was before through his eyes and how he is now through Tate's eyes. And it's so, it'll break your heart. It's traumatizing. It's so good. After I reread Ugly Love, I went back and reread November 9th. I love this one more than I love Ugly Love. I love this book. 5 out of 5 from Miss Colleen Hoover again. It's about a girl who ends up running into this guy in a weird way at a cafe. They hit it off, but she's about to move out of state, and so they decide just to hang out for this one night, and then once a year on the same date they will meet back every single year for the next 5 years. And it takes you through that relationship. It'll break your heart. The plot twist in this book I was not expecting. Many times things just like hit you and you're just like, how did that happen? I was not expecting that. Every November 9th she hits you with something else and you're just like, boom, boom, boom. So good. The next book I read was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This was another one by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I had a hard time getting into this at first, not gonna lie. I was a little bit like, what is going on? Once we got into the stories of the 7 husbands, I ended up really liking this book. It's about a Hollywood icon, Evelyn Hugo, and she's getting interviewed and she tells her life story. After she's had 7 husbands, she ends up hiring this nobody journalist to do this, and so throughout the story you're also trying to figure out why she decided to hire her, of all people, to tell this story. It ended up being really good. There are some slow parts, but overall I actually really liked this book, and I will give it a 4 out of 5, honestly. I'm interested to read it again now that I know what happens. I'm the type of person that, like, if I liked it enough and now that I know what happens and I was like a little skeptical at first, I want to go back and read it again. The whole majority of this book I was not expecting, but definitely recommend. Those are all the books I've read so far in January and February. It's a lot and a lot of Colleen Hoover, but they're all my recommendations. I'm going to put them in order of how I rated them below so that y'all can check them out along with the links. Most of these were top reads, so I definitely recommend a lot of these books. That's all I have for you today. Thank y'all so much for watching. I really am so thankful for all the support I've gotten on my YouTube channel this past couple of weeks. I'm having so much fun doing this, and so I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a like. Go ahead and leave a comment of what book I should read next. I have a pretty long TBR list, but I'm always wanting to add more so that I'm prepared. So please go ahead and leave all your book recs below, or any other books that you want a review on, or if you want to know that I've read, just ask away below. But also don't forget to subscribe to be notified for my next video every Thursday. Love y'all.